Hey, I'm Allie and welcome to When the Snow Falls, a web show where different speakers tell their own personal stories involving mental illness. Today's story comes to us from Alex, and some possible triggers in his story include suicide, depression, and alcohol abuse. As always, we ask you to be mindful of any possible personal triggers that you may have while viewing this story or any other in the future. Once you're done watching, we encourage you to submit any questions that you may have for Alex through our blog at snowfallstogether.tumblr.com. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks for helping to fight against the stigmatization of mental illness. Here's Alex.
Hey everyone, my name's Alex. I'm a senior music education major at Ithaca College. Growing up when I was young, I was always kind of that depressed kid. When I was a child, I have really specific memories of me just getting really upset for no reason at all, and my parents, they didn't really know what to do, so I remember them going up to me and being, "Oh, Alex, the Celtics are on tonight, you'll feel better, that'll make you feel better." And when I think about that, this basketball team was basically my therapist growing up. I loved everything about watching them. I loved hearing the announcers talk. I loved listening to that cheesy synthetic guitar solo going into the commercials, and I loved seeing the players, even though when I was young the Celtics were horrible, and that just really made me feel better. And I think in addition to that, when I was growing up, I had this really strong support system to help me get through all of it, and that really worked well. Then came college. I came into college with a lot of these great dreams for myself, and not really knowing not what to expect. And like people always say, things never really go how you'd anticipate them, and that was my case. My depression really just got a lot worse almost instantaneously after getting to college. I felt lost. I didn't fit in, and I was really depressed. I remember I'd stay in bed a lot of the time watching reruns of really bad shows. I think I went through all 11 seasons of Seventh Heaven in a semester, and it's a lot of TV. My grades suffered a lot. I missed a lot of classes. I had to withdraw from one of my classes, and I was really irritable all the time. I remember I got into this argument with my associate dean of the School of Music at my school, and I basically called him a fat liar, and it was just a really bad time. I remember I'd cry all the time. I'd cry in class, and I was afraid of anyone seeing me, so I'd try to push my tears back into my eyes, and then they'd keep on coming out faster, and then people would just notice. I remember this one crying spell I had. My mom came up to visit me because she was nervous and afraid and worried about me, and at that point I spent like a whole day in bed, and I remember I left the room and she made it for me, and that just triggered this huge multi-hour long period of crying. And I think what triggered that, when I think back about it, is I felt loved, and at a time in my life when I felt that no one loved me, that really meant a lot and set off a lot of emotion. When I was at class, people noticed I was visibly upset, and I'd get these text messages asking what was wrong or if there was anything they could do, and I just ignore them, and I just didn't know how to respond, and that was a really bad thing. To make matters worse, during this time I self-medicated a lot with alcohol. I'd probably 75% of the time I drank, I'd black out. I wouldn't remember anything that happened, and I'd have strange injuries on my body that I wouldn't know how I got, and you just woke up the next morning feeling bad, not just physically bad and hungover like most college students feel after a night of drinking, but emotionally bad too. You just felt more depressed than you were the night before, which you already were depressed the night before. you just felt like you regretted everything. And I was just in such a bad state then that even with all this feeling of regret, that didn't stop me from drinking more the next night and blacking out then. Things really reached a new level in my self-medication era when one morning I woke up and I was in a hospital bed. I had alcohol poisoning and things were so severe I actually defecated myself. My BAC that night was 0.28, and the morning after I woke up, the nurse told me that people can die if their BAC is 0.20, and the fact that I was 2 points away from that and I came so close to dying, you'd think I'd freak out, but I didn't care. The way I looked at it, the alcohol was doing me a favor, and putting an end to things that I'd have to work a lot harder to put an end to if it weren't for my self-medication. After my hospitalization, I did stop drinking for a while. I think the whole reason behind that was because blacking out's scary. I'm probably not gonna put out an internet poll after this asking all you viewers if you ever have blacked out, but I'm sure for those of you that have, it's a very, you'll know it's a very scary thing, and I think that with that in mind, I felt that I had to stop, and that was a good decision for me. Even though I did stop drinking after that, my depression largely stayed the same. I still cried a lot. I still missed a lot of class. I fell behind on my schoolwork, and my grades still suffered, but things largely stayed the same, and I still got those text messages. And then my depression made an all-time high the beginning of the summer after my sophomore year. For the best way I could put it was I literally wanted to leave this world. I remember that morning I was standing in my kitchen staring at the drawer that we keep our silverware in, just completely zoned out for maybe as long as a minute, just thinking about possible ways that I could end this, and I really just wanted to put an end to all of it. My emotional pain was too severe that I had nothing else in my mind. I didn't think about how my family would feel. I didn't think about how my sisters would feel or how my friends or anything about that. I only cared about putting an end to my life. I remember later that day I was sitting in a chair a lot like this one in one of the rooms of my house, and my mom, dad, and two sisters were in the other room watching some movie on TV, and they were laughing and having a good time, and I was sitting in a fetal position just bawling my eyes out, and all I could think was, I'm never going to see these people again in my entire life. And I thought about how much they love each other and how much they love me, and the fact that I'd never see them again. It was just a really difficult time. I remember my mom came to visit me that day when I was sitting in the chair crying, and she placed an arm on my shoulder and asked me what was wrong, and I really just couldn't find the words. I was just in such a bad place. Fortunately, that day, nothing did happen, and the very next day, I decided to see a mental health professional. I saw a psychiatrist, and I, for the first time in my life, got an official diagnosis. I was diagnosed with a mood disorder and prescribed medication, and I embarked on the long road to recovery. When I started my junior year, when that horrible summer ended, I went to the counseling center at my school and saw a therapist there, and that was literally probably the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. I think we made a great team, and when I think about great teams, I kind of have low standards for great teams because the Celtics were my form of therapy, and that just blew my mind how great of a team we were. We were able to communicate our problems extremely well with each other, and I was able to respond to his challenges because, let's face it, therapy is one of those things where you can't just sit in your bed in between sessions. You have to respond to fear and challenges. And this one moment in therapy where I really realized how important it was to respond to these challenges was when my therapist and I were talking, and I think I mentioned like, oh, I'm an introverted person, and my therapist sitting back in his chair folded his arms like, that word introverted you just used, I'm gonna give you another word for that. How about the word afraid? And I was just dumbfounded by all that. I'm like, wow, I never thought about that before. And just walking around campus the whole week after that, I'm like, wow, I'm not introverted. I am afraid. And I just started to take a lot more risks after that. And when I think about my therapist, probably the most important thing was from early on in our work together, he mentioned that he reminded me a lot of himself when he was younger. And just when I looked at him, I thought he was a man that had it all together. And when I thought that he was once in my shoes, and when I thought that he was once in my shoes, I thought there was hope for me for the first time in a really long time, that maybe one day I could be like him. And that was motivation to keep going, and was motivation to keep going and keep on trying and doing my homework and responding to challenges, because I knew I could be a better person. That Thanksgiving, my therapy really took a turn for the better. I remember my family was sitting around the table talking about what they were thankful for, and just suburban Massachusetts family small talk. And when they got to when they were saying all this, all I could think was that how thankful I was that I'm alive, and that I didn't take action that day just 4 months ago. And when I thought about all the nights, when I think about how thankful I am, I think about staying up till 3 a.m. with my friends, counting how many times that Jay-Z goes in Holy Grail, and when I think about when I'm walking around school and people come up to me and say how they always wanted to say hi to me, and how they always wanted to say hi to me and haven't until then. I think about how thankful I am when I think about one day when I can teach music to students who will call me Mr. Judge, and how one day I'll stay up and eating ice cream and dancing to Taylor Swift songs with my kids who are going to call me dad someday. I think about how thankful I am when I saw the Red Sox win the World Series this year after finishing in last place the year before. And there are just times I walk to class and just a huge smile will come onto my face, and people might look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm just so happy that I'm alive, and I never thought I could feel that way. And just when I think about all the people out there who don't make it and never get to feel how happy I am right now and how thankful I am right now, I just think about how much in desperate need we are to get something done and just to put an end to all the stigma. When I got back the day after Thanksgiving and I saw my therapist, I told him about this whole experience and how thankful I was. And for the first time in my life, I realized how much of a big issue this is, because once I said this, my therapist started to cry. And as he was wiping tears away from his eyes, I will always remember the words he said. He said, "Listen, I'm glad that you're alive. Life gets hard sometimes, but it will probably never get that hard again. You're a beautiful kid." And that just put into perspective how all my work paid off, that I could bring so much emotion to this person. And when I saw his reaction, that gave me the courage to tell my story to all of you. When I saw how emotional he got and how affected he was by my story, I thought that I could bring a positive outlook to all of you, and that that's why I'm here today. At our very last session, my therapist gave me a copy of his favorite book. It is The Prophet by Cale Gibran, and in this book there's a quote that really reminds me of how far I've come and how joyful I am. And the quote is, "Your sorrow is your joy unmasked. The deeper that sorrow craves into your being, the more joy that you can contain." And when I think about this quote, I just think about all of you and how you might be feeling right now. And I know what it's like to be on the other side. I know how it feels like to be on rock bottom, and how you feel like you can never get out. And I'm living proof that you can get out. And when I think about how far I've come, I just urge all of you to just keep trying and to never give up, because once your sorrow gets unmasked, and the joy that comes out is the most beautiful thing in the world. Thank you for listening. Cheers.